Welcome to this 1-hour English lesson. In this advanced English vocabulary lesson, you're going to learn the most common confusing words in English. So in this lesson, you're going to learn a group of confusing words or a confusing grammar topic, and you'll study that, you'll learn it, and then you'll complete a quiz, and then you'll continue on. Welcome back to J4S English Training. Of course, I'm Jennifer, and this is your place to become a fluent, confident English speaker. Let's get started. First, let's talk about the difference between during and while. Ultimately, they have the same meaning, but their sentence structure is different. So that's the important thing to keep in mind. So let's begin with during. We use during to talk about something that happens over a period of time. So there's this event taking place over a period of time, and then something happens. It happens at one point during that time. It can also even last for a longer period as well during that period of time. So for example, I could say, my phone rang during the movie. So of course, a movie has a start and an end about 2 hours, right? So the movie's going on and on and on, and then at some point from the start of the movie to the end of the movie, my phone rang. It could have been at the beginning, the middle, the end, we really don't know. But I want you to notice the sentence structure. My phone rang during the movie. So what is the movie in terms of parts of speech? Is it a verb, an adjective, a noun, an adverb? What is it? It's a noun, And that's the important thing to keep in mind. We use during plus noun, during plus noun. So remember that, because that's important when we talk about while. While is used to talk about something that happens at the same time as something else. So just like during, we have one action that's taking place with a start and an end. And then while, another action will happen at some point as well. Now, it can happen for a period of time. It can be shorter or longer, but it has to happen between the start and the end of another action. So if you're thinking, well, that sounds exactly the same as during, because with during, we had a start and an end, and then an action happens. You're right. The meaning is basically the same, okay? But it's the sentence structure that's different. So listen to this example. My phone rang while I was watching the movie. My phone rang while I was watching the movie. Comparing that to during. My phone rang during the movie. So we already know that during we need a noun. With while we use a clause. So we need a subject, a verb, and then an object. So you can think of it as a sentence. My phone rang while subject, I, then verb, was watching the object, the movie. While I was watching the movie. I can't say while the movie. I can't say that. And I can't say during I was watching the movie. I can't say that either. So basically, it's the same meaning, it's just different sentence structures that will tell you which one you want to use. If you're using a noun, it's during. If you're using a clause or a sentence, then it's while. So now it's your turn to practice. I want you to leave 2 examples in the comments below, one with during and one with while. Are you ready for your quiz? Hit pause, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. Let's continue on and talk about the difference between the present simple and the present continuous. This is a mistake that I see students making quite a lot, and this is a mistake that I see my advanced students make. Now, you need to keep in mind that when you use a different verb tense, the meaning changes. So when I hear, I live in Paris, in the present simple, that is different from I'm living in Paris. The meaning is different, and I'm going to interpret them differently simply because of the verb tense you used. Now, our present simple, I live in Paris. Of course, to form the present simple, we just take our base verb, which is the infinitive without to. Remember, we need to conjugate this with our subject. So if it was she, it would be she lives in Paris. Okay, now we use the present simple for routines, like I'm sure you know. But we also use the present simple when we're talking about permanent situations, or you can think of them as simply facts. So when I hear someone say, I live in Paris, I see this as a permanent situation. I live in Paris. I live in Paris today, and I'm going to be living in Paris for the future as well. It's a permanent situation. Now, let's take a look at our next sentence. I'm living in Paris. So this is in the present continuous. Now, of course, we form the present continuous with the verb to be conjugated with our subject. So I'm living, she is, she's living, conjugated with our subject. And then we need our verb in ing form. She's living, I'm living. Now, we use the present continuous for situations taking place right now, right? But we also use the present continuous for temporary situations. So when I hear, I'm living in Paris, I think of this as a temporary situation. So I think you're living in Paris right now, but you don't expect to be living in Paris in the future. When in the future? Well, that isn't clear. But when I hear it, I think of it as a temporary situation. And this is a big difference if you live in Paris permanently or you live in Paris temporarily, right? Because you can imagine if you go to a job interview and then you say to the interviewer, I'm living in Paris, well, they might not think that you're going to be in the city for very long. So they might not consider you as an applicant because they want somebody who's going to be in the position for a long time. But you are only going to be in the city temporarily, right? So that could have a really big impact. Or same thing if you're on a date and you're talking to a potential romantic partner, but you say, I'm living in Paris, well, they might think, well, it's not worthwhile to pursue this relationship because she's going to be moving in the future. So there's a big difference in meaning between these two sentences. So keep in mind, we use the present simple for a permanent situation and the present continuous for a temporary situation. So now it's your turn to practice. I want you to put in the comments one sentence in the present simple that's a permanent situation and one sentence in the present continuous that's a temporary situation. Are you ready for your quiz? Hit pause, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. Let's move on and talk about the difference between was and were. Now, of course, both was and were are the past forms of the verb to be. And we use was and were in different grammatical structures in English. The most common time you'll see was or were is in the past simple. So let's just take a present statement. Let's use to be late. So here we have the verb to be late. Now, if I want to make a sentence in the past, for example, yesterday I, now I take my verb to be and I need to conjugate this in the past. There are two different choices, was or were. Your choice depends on the subject. So in order to know which one you need, was or were, you simply look at your subject. Yesterday, the subject is I. Yesterday, I was late. Yesterday, I was late. Yesterday, you were. Yesterday, you were late. Yesterday, she was late. Yesterday, he was late. It was late. So notice, he, she, it, those are our three options for the third person singular subject. The third person singular is conjugated with was. Yesterday, we were late, and yesterday, they were late. So you can see that the subjects I and third person singular use was. The subjects you, we, and they use were. That's what you need to remember. So pause the video now, take as much time as you need to memorize this. You simply need to memorize this. Now, the same rule applies when we use the verb to be in the past in different grammatical structures. So this example was using the past simple. Now, we also use the verb to be in the past with the past continuous. The past continuous is formed with subject, was or were. Your choice depends on your subject, right? And then your verb in ing form. I could say, yesterday I was running late. We were running late. He was running late. They were running late. So it's the same rules that we just covered. That doesn't change even though we're using a different grammatical structure. This time it's the past continuous. Now we also use the verb to be in the past, so was or were, depending on the subject, in the passive voice. So let's take an active sentence, and I could say, the present surprised me. The present surprised me. Now, I can take this active voice and I can turn it into the passive, and I would say, what? Well, you guys tell me. I'm going to give you a second and I want you to write it in the comments. What's the passive form of this active sentence? Write it in the comments. So, did you get it? I was surprised. I was surprised by the present. I was surprised by this present. But now, let's say the active form used a different pronoun, and it was the present surprised us. Okay, what would that be now? The present surprised us? What would that be in the passive form? So, you guys tell me. Write it down in the comments, the present surprised us. What would that be in the passive voice? That would be we. We is now the subject, so I need to think, do I need was or were? Well, remember, it depends on the subject. We use were. We were surprised by the present. To summarize, the choice between was or were depends on the subject. We use was with the subjects I or third person singular, he, she, it. We use were with subjects you, we, and they. And was and were are used in the past form of the verb to be. This is most commonly found in the past simple, past continuous, and passive voice. And now you know how to use was or were so you won't be confused. Are you ready for your quiz? Hit pause, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. Let's move on and talk about the difference between you and me or you and I. Now, the absolute easiest way to know which one you need to use is always drop the you or drop the other person involved. And just ask yourself, in this sentence, do I need me or I? Because when you answer that question, in every scenario, all you need to do is then add in the you and it will be correct. So let's take an example of this and I'll show you what I mean. For example, give that to, give that to I, give that to me. What do you guys think? I or me? Put it in the comments below. Give that to I, give that to me. It would be, of course, me. Give that to me. So now all you need to add is another person. You could say, give that to my brother and me, for example. Give that to my brother and me. So it doesn't matter who you add after. Let's try another example. Let's say you're walking down the street and you see this beautiful garden and you ask a stranger, you say, can you take a picture of, can you take a picture of I or of me? Can you take a picture of I? Can you take a picture of me? Which one do you think? Put it in the comments below. Can you take a picture of me? So now you just add, can you take a picture of my friend and me? My friend and me? My friends and me? It doesn't really matter what you put in. So let's try another example. Went to the party. Went to the party. So is this me went to the party or I went to the party? What do you think? Put it in the comments. Of course, it's I went to the party. So all we need to do is add in my friends and I. You and I went to the party. Doesn't matter what you put before I. So one more example. Ran a marathon. I ran a marathon. Me ran a marathon. What do you think? Put it in the comments. I ran a marathon. So now I know it's I, so I can just add you and I ran a marathon. My friends and I, my husband and I, my boss and I. Doesn't matter what you put in. My sister and I. It doesn't matter. So that's the easiest way for you to know if you need you and me or you and I. Just drop the you or drop the my friends, drop the whoever it is, my coworkers, and just ask yourself, do I need me or I in this sentence? Now, if you're not sure if you need me or I, you just have to remember this one thing. I is always the subject of a sentence. The subject of a sentence, okay? And what's me? Me is the object of a sentence. So just to quickly study this topic, let's go back to our example of, can you take a picture of me? Can you take a picture of my friends and me? Okay, so who's the subject in this sentence? Can you? So you are the subject in this sentence. You are doing the action. I am receiving the action. I'm the object in this sentence. Can you take a picture of me? So I'm not doing the action, right? So the subject is the one doing the action. The object is the one receiving the action. So that's just a quick overview, but that is how the easiest way to tell if you need you and me or you and I. Are you ready for your quiz? Hit pause, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. Let's move on and talk about have in different conjugations, and we'll look at have had, has had, and had had. Our infinitive form of the verb is to have. Of course, we can use the infinitive in certain sentence structures. For example, I'd like to have more time. So here is the infinitive being used. Now, we can also use the base verb. The base verb is have. So we simply drop the to from the infinitive to get our base verb. We can also use the base verb in certain sentence structures. For example, I'll have time tomorrow. Here we're using it in the future simple. We need will and a base verb. Our base verb is have. I'll have time tomorrow. Now here's where things get tricky. In the present simple form of the verb, we have two options. We have and has. Your choice depends on the subject. We use have for the subjects I, you, we, and they. For example, they have 2 kids. Now, we use has in the present simple for the subjects he, she, and it are third person singular. For example, she has 2 kids. The past form of the verb is had. This is for all subjects. For example, she had a muffin for breakfast. Now here's where things get tricky for students. Let's talk about the present perfect. So the present perfect with the verb have can be formed in 2 different ways. It can be formed as has had or have had. Now, had is the same for all subjects. It doesn't change. But has and have changes according to the subject. You already learned this with the present simple. So you know that we would use have had for our subjects I, you, we, and they. For example, we've had enough. And we use has had for subjects he, she, it, the third person singular. For example, she's had enough. Now notice how I'm using a contraction. I've, you've, we've, they've, she's, he's, it's. Native English speakers always use contractions with the present perfect, so I encourage you to get comfortable with that. So just remember, your choice between have had and has had depends on the subject, and we use has had for third person singular, he, she, it, and we use have had for all other subjects, I, you, we, and they. And now we come to had had. This sounds really bizarre, right? But it's grammatically correct because this is the past perfect form of the verb. Now, had is used for all subjects, so it doesn't change. We use had for I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. So this one is easy to remember. You just have to remember that had is the past perfect, and have had and has had is the present perfect. That's the thing that you need to remember. Now, native English speakers also use contractions with had. So you're not going to hear a native speaker say had very often. You'll hear the contraction, and the contraction is very subtle. It's a very soft sound. I'd had, you'd had, he'd had, she'd had, it had, we'd had, they'd had. So it's a very soft d sound added to the subject. For example, he'd had a busy week. He'd had a busy week. So notice it sounds very similar to he had a busy week, which is just the past simple form of the verb. So let's listen to those 2 sentences again. He had a busy week. He'd had a busy week. I'd say even a native speaker would have a hard time hearing that difference. It's the sentence structure and the rest of the sentence that will let you know if it's a simple past or the past perfect. So you have to pay attention to context as well. So this is a lesson that you're going to have to review a few times to get comfortable with it, and I definitely recommend that you just take some notes so you remember that difference. And now I want you to practice. So of course, I want you to leave a present simple sentence, a past simple sentence, a present perfect sentence, and bonus points if you can leave a past perfect sentence as well. And remember, your conjugation depends on the subject. Are you ready for your quiz? Hit pause, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. Now let's move on and talk about be used to and get used to. These are must-know expressions for your vocabulary. Now, both of them are used to talk about a feeling of comfort when something's new in your daily routine, okay? So let me give you an example. If you watched my video yesterday, you'll know that I'm using a new mouse for my computer. Now, this mouse is a little bit different, a little bit weird, because I have to use my thumb to move the mouse, which is not normal, right? So because of that, because it's not the normal way to use a mouse, I'm not comfortable with this action right now, okay? So I have to get used to it. I have to get used to it. Notice I said used to it. It can be two things. It can be the mouse. I have to get used to the mouse, my new mouse, perhaps. So we can have get used to and then a noun. Now, I could also say I have to get used to using it. Using it. Now, what do you notice there? In that case, I'm using a verb, but I'm using a gerund verb, a verb in ing. Get used to using. So get used to plus gerund. Now this is the case for both be used to and get used to. After to, you can have a noun or a gerund verb. So pay attention to that structure. Now remember I said I have to get used to this mouse. This means I have to move from a feeling of discomfort to comfort. And the only reason why is because this is a new item in my daily routine. So anytime you add something new to your daily routine, you can use this expression, get used to, okay? Now, how about be used to? When do we use that? Well, you simply need to know the difference between get and be. So we use get when we're talking about a transition from not to. In this case, not comfortable to comfortable, okay? The transition. So I said I have to, it's a requirement, I have to get used to using this new mouse. So I have to transition from not comfortable to comfortable. Now, how about a month later, you could ask me, oh, hey, Jennifer, how's the new mouse? Is it still uncomfortable? And then I could reply a month later, a month after using this mouse every day, I could say, no, I'm used to it. I'm used to it. And remember, the it can be I'm used to the mouse or I'm used to using verb in ing. I'm used to using it. So here, notice I use the verb to be. And that's because I'm talking about my current state. Right now, a month into the future, right now, I'm comfortable with using this mouse. So when you get to the point where that new item in your daily routine is now comfortable, you can use be. I'm used to it. I'm used to it. But when you're in that transition, you'll use get. I'm getting used to it. I need to get used to it. Remember, get and be are verbs, so you need to conjugate them with the time reference and the subject as well. So if it were she, it would be she is used to it, or she's getting used to it. So don't forget that verb conjugation. So just remember that we use be and get used to when we're talking about something new in our daily routine and a feeling of comfort with that new activity. We use get to talk about the transition from not comfortable to comfortable, and we use be to talk about the current state as comfortable. Of course, these are both verbs, so you need to conjugate them with the subject and the time reference, and don't forget our structure. After to, we can have either a noun or a gerund verb. So that's everything you need to know to feel comfortable and confident using be and get used to. Now, of course, it's your turn to practice. I want you to think about something new in your daily routine. For me, it was using my mouse. So what about you? And talk about how you're getting used to it, and then talk about how you are used to it. So see if you can use be and get to talk about this new item in your daily routine. And leave your examples in the comments below. Are you ready for your quiz? Hit pause, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. Now let's move on and talk about collective nouns and the conjugation of verbs with collective nouns. So I'll give you an example. My family arriving tomorrow. Do I need is or are? Because in a family, there's more than one person, right? So is a family singular or plural? What do you guys think? Put it in the comments. My family is, my family are. What do you think? Put it in the comments. Family is, family are. The correct answer is my family is. My family is arriving tomorrow. Now, family is a collective noun. What that means is within this noun, there is more than one. Of course, like I said, a family, there's more than one person, right? But we treat that noun as one entity. Now, you can think of it as we're not talking about the individual members within that family. We're talking about the family as a whole. So we're imagining that that family is one unit. So that's what you can remember with collective nouns. They're conjugated as singular because we refer to them as one unit. So of course you need to know subject-verb agreement for the verb to be, and you also need this for the present simple. For example, my family arrives tomorrow. Not my family arrived tomorrow. No. My family arrives tomorrow. Because remember, we need to add that S or ES to third person singular, he, she, it verbs. So let's think of some other collective nouns that are conjugated as third person singular. For example, company. Same thing. Company, many different people within that company, but we refer to it as one entity. It's third person singular. The company is profitable. Team is another one. Of course, there's more than one person on a team, but we conjugate it as one group, one whole. So team, group is a good one. Community, class is another good one as well. Those are all conjugated as third person singular. Now, how about this one? Everyone. Is this conjugated as third person singular or plural? Would it be everyone eats, third person singular conjugation, or everyone eat? Everyone eats at noon, everyone eat at noon. What do you guys think? Is everyone third person singular or plural? Let me know in the comments what you think. Everyone eats. Everyone eats at noon. So everyone is third person singular. It's a collective noun. There's more than one person, but we're referring to it as one entity, one unit. So this applies for everyone, everybody, anyone, and anybody. Now, some other common collective nouns that you'll probably use in your vocabulary would be government, audience, jury, tribe, couple, so two people, but we refer to them as one. The couple is really cute. Couple is a collective noun, and army as well. The army is well prepared. So here's the list of the most common collective nouns. I definitely recommend that you pause the video and you write these down or take a screenshot so you can add these to your vocabulary. And remember, they need to be conjugated as third person singular. This is a really important grammar concept, so make sure you take the time. And for now, to practice, I want you to choose 3 of these collective nouns and write 3 sentences in the comments below just to get really comfortable with them. Are you ready for your quiz? Hit pause, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. Now let's move on and talk about the difference between can and be able to. Now, both of these are used to talk about ability, but the difference is in the sentence structure that's possible and also what type of ability. So first of all, you need to know that can is used for general ability. So we use it in both the positive form and the negative form in a very general context. For example, I could just say, I can swim. I can swim. Just in general, anytime, anywhere, not specific to a specific pool or a specific place or a specific type of water. Just I can swim in general. Now, the opposite, of course, the negative, I can't swim. So it doesn't matter where I am. It doesn't matter what type of pool I'm in, what type of water I'm in, what time of day it is, where the location is. It doesn't matter. In any context, in a general context, I can't swim. So can is used in positive and negative for general ability. Now let's compare that to be able to. So, be able to, this is used for a specific ability. Now, what does that mean? If it's specific, you can think of it as specific to a time, a location, a specific type, for example. It's limited. So, I could say, I'm not able to swim today. I'm not able to swim today. Now, I wouldn't just say I'm not able to swim because that sounds like a general statement. And if it's a general statement to all places, all times, all situations, I would use can. I can't swim. But if I say I'm not able to, that means it's a specific time or a specific location. So I might add to that sentence and say, I'm not able to swim today because the pool's closed. Or because I have an important meeting, or because I'm not feeling well. So there's a specific reason that's preventing that ability. So that's the first important distinction. Can, general, be able to, specific. Now, the other very important thing you need to remember is that grammatically, these are different. And that's because can is a modal verb. Modal verbs are limited. They're limited in the sentence structure that they can use. Now, can as a modal verb is used in the present and the future. Be able to, this is a verb expression. The verb, of course, is the verb to be. That's the verb that's conjugated with the subject and the time reference. As a regular verb expression, we can use this in any sentence structure, any formation, any verb tense, anywhere on our timeline of past, present, or future. So, this is very important because remember, I previously told you that can is used for a specific ability. But let's say you want to talk about a specific ability in a sentence structure where a modal verb is not possible in that sentence structure. If that's the case, even if you're talking about specific ability, you would use be able to. So you use be able to when can is not possible grammatically. Let me give you an example to make this very clear. So I could say a lifeguard needs swim for 20 minutes without stopping. So in this case, this is a general ability. This is something that a lifeguard needs any place, anytime. It's just a general ability. But what about this blank here? What do I need grammatically to complete this sentence? Well, we have to look at the sentence. I have need as a verb. Needs, the lifeguard needs. Now, need is a verb. The next verb has to be in the infinitive form. Now, can as a modal cannot be used in an infinitive form. It doesn't exist. Modal verbs are just the verb. They don't change in different structures. So in this case, I can't say a lifeguard needs can swim. No, that grammatically doesn't work, even though I'm talking about general ability. I need an infinitive. Because of that, I have to use be able to. And I'd say a lifeguard needs to be able to in the infinitive form. Now I have a correct sentence. So now you know how to use can and be able to correctly. Are you ready for your quiz? Hit pause, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. Now let's move on and talk about the difference between rather than and instead of. Let's start with rather than. Rather than is used to state a preference. So you have two things and you want to say which one you prefer, which one you like more, your preference. Because of that, we're most likely going to use rather than with the verb prefer. For example, I prefer making dinner rather than eating out. So I have my two choices, make dinner, eat out, and my preference is make dinner. I prefer making dinner rather than eating out. So rather than is simply used to connect those ideas and form that complete sentence. Now notice, rather than, the next verb is going to be a gerund, which is simply your verb in ing. That's 100% of the time when you use a verb, so don't forget that. Now, in terms of placement, I can take that same sentence, but I can move rather than to the beginning of the sentence. And I can say, rather than ordering takeout, I prefer making dinner. So you do have that flexibility. Instead of a gerund verb, you could use a noun. So I could say, I prefer pizza, just the noun. I'm not talking about a verb. I prefer pizza rather than spaghetti. So I'm still connecting the sentence together with rather than, but I'm using two nouns instead of two verbs. Now, instead of is used as substitution, which means I'm going to take one object and I'm going to replace it with something else. okay? So substitution. Rather than just talking about preference, I like this one more, and you still see both objects, that would be rather than. But with instead of, we're substituting. So one is going away, and we're only leaving the one we want. That's instead of. So I could say, we made dinner instead of eating out, okay? So in this case, the two objects, the two choices, make dinner, eat out. But rather than just stating my preference, one's going away. And the one that went away was eat out, okay? So we're left with make dinner. We made dinner. Notice my verb tense is the past simple because this action is already complete. We made dinner yesterday instead of eating out. Now notice I'm still using a gerund verb after instead of. So that's your structure, instead of gerund verb. But we can also use nouns for our structure. So I could say, we had pizza instead of spaghetti. So again, two choices, one of them is going away. We had pizza instead of spaghetti. Now, I can also just use the word instead. So let's say a friend asks, oh, so did you have spaghetti last night? So I was talking to my friend about pizza and spaghetti. So she wants to know, did you have spaghetti last night? Then I can say, no, we had pizza instead. So when I don't want to specify the second noun or the second action, because it's already been specified, my friend specified it, so I don't need to repeat it. In that case, I can just drop it and use instead. Did you have spaghetti? No, we had pizza instead of spaghetti. But I don't need to say it, it would be repetitive. No, we had pizza instead. So just remember that rather than is used to express a preference between two things, and instead of is used to talk about substitution. So taking that action and one of them is going away. Now, the best way, of course, to really feel confident is to practice these. So I want you to leave your own sentences in the comments below. Why don't you try 4 sentences? 2 with instead of and 2 with rather than, because you can practice with the gerund and the noun for each so you get really comfortable with that advanced sentence structure. Are you ready for your quiz? Hit pause, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. Let's move on and talk about should, must, and have to. Now, all 3 of these are modal verbs, and we use them to talk about obligation or to give advice. First, let's talk about should. We use should to give advice or opinion or a recommendation. So keep in mind, should is not an obligation. So let's think of a scenario where you could give advice, an opinion, or a recommendation. Let's say your friend calls you and says, I feel overwhelmed at work. So your friend's in a negative situation and you want to give some advice, an opinion, or recommendation. You can use should. You can reply back and say, you should talk to your boss. Now let's take a look at the structure. We need should and a base verb. The base verb is simply the infinitive without to. You should talk. You should talk to your boss. I could use a negative and I could say, you shouldn't take on any more work. Or maybe I could give her some advice or my recommendation, my opinion, and say, you should ask a colleague for help. Now it's your turn to practice this structure. Let's say I call you and I say, I have a really bad headache. What's some advice, a recommendation, or an opinion you can share with me using should or shouldn't? And remember, you need your base verb. So put your example in the comments now. Now let's talk about must. Must is used for obligation. For example, you must finish the report by 5 o'clock. I have no option. I must finish the report by 5 o'clock. It's an obligation. Now let's take a look at the structure. We use must with a base verb. You must finish. You must finish the report by 5 o'clock. I might get an email from the government that says you must file your taxes by the end of the month. Or to apply for a job, they might tell me you must submit your application online. So now it's your turn to practice. I want you to leave an example in the comments using must. And remember, it's an obligation and you need a base verb. So leave your example now. Let's move on to have to. Have to is also used for obligation, but generally that obligation is coming from someone else, an outside force. For example, I could say, I have to walk my dog. So first, let's take a look at the sentence structure. Here we have and then our infinitive. So keep in mind, this one we use have to. Have to and the base verb. I have to walk my dog. So whether or not I want to walk my dog isn't really the issue here. Is that as a pet owner, I'm obligated to walk my dog. I have to walk my dog. Or I could say, I have to babysit my cousin this weekend. So again, the obligation is coming from somewhere else. So maybe my aunt is requiring that I do this, or another family member. I have to babysit my cousin this weekend. Remember, to babysit are infinitive. Or I could say, I have to buy a new car. Now the obligation is my current car doesn't work anymore. So I have to buy a new car. It's not my choice. I don't want to, but I have to because my current car doesn't work. So now it's your turn to practice. Let us know in the comments something you have to do this week. Have to do. Remember to use the infinitive. So to summarize, should is used with advice, opinion, or recommendation. Must and have to are used with obligations. You might be wondering, what's the difference? Well, generally, I see must being used by the government or official bodies that give us rules and regulations. And I see it on online forms as well. That's when I see must the most. Now with have to, I see that as an outside pressure. So that would be the difference between those two. And remember, should and must plus base verb, but have to verb. Have and the infinitive. So now you know how to use should, must, and have to. Are you ready for your quiz? Hit pause, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. Our final group of confusing words. Let's talk about have no and don't have. So let me give you an example sentence. I have no time. I don't have any time. Now both of these examples have the exact same meaning. We're talking about the existence of time and we're making it negative. So we're saying it doesn't exist in this specific situation. Now, when you look at the sentences, you'll notice that the grammar, the sentence structure is very different. The standard way to form a negative is simply to use the second one. I don't have any time. That's probably the one that you're most comfortable with. Now, I get questions a lot from students because they hear from native speakers on TV, movies, or outside of the classroom, they hear native speakers forming negatives with have no and saying, I have no time. And they're confused by the grammar. So let's make this nice and easy for you. So remember, the meaning is the same. We use have no plus the noun when we're talking about desires, emotions, attitudes, and concepts. So you can think of time as a concept. But let me give you another example with a desire or an emotion or maybe even an attitude. I could say, my boss has no patience. My boss has no patience. Now remember, have no, of course our verb is have, we need to conjugate it with the subject. So here, my subject is my boss, third person singular, so I need has. My boss has no patience. I could also say my boss has no idea. That would be a concept. My boss has no right, a concept. My boss has no confidence. That could be an attitude or an emotion. So other common things you could use: happiness, peace, joy, any sort of skill as well. So in that category of nouns, we can use the structure have no. Now we use our standard structure don't have plus a physical noun. So anything like pens, paper, scissors, a computer, a phone, all of these are physical nouns. They're not concepts, they're not emotions, they're not desires, they're physical. So we can use this structure, and I would simply say, I don't have a pen. I don't have scissors. I don't have paper, right? Now, of course, we can absolutely use don't have with the concepts, the desires, the emotions. My boss doesn't have any patience. That's absolutely correct. So remember that don't have is the standard way to form a negative sentence, and have no is an alternative way that's only used in specific situations. So the one specific situation is when we're talking about desires, concepts, emotions, and attitudes. Now, another time when we can use have no and the noun is we want to emphasize it. We want to make it a lot stronger of a statement. So I could use money as an example. Now, money is a physical possession. I can feel it, I can see it, not like patience, which I can't see, I can't feel. It's just a concept or an attitude. But money, I can feel it, I can touch it. It's physical. To emphasize the statement, to make it more dramatic, I could use have no and a physical possession. So I could say, I have no money, which emphasizes it. It makes it stronger than saying, I don't have any money. I have no money. So you might hear statements like this when you really want to emphasize that you don't have it. Now, although you can use have no with physical nouns, you have to think, is it common to emphasize that you don't have a pen? Like, would it be common to say, I have no pens? I mean, I guess depending on context, it could be acceptable to emphasize that you don't have a pen, but really it's not something that you emphasize, that you make more dramatic. So just keep in mind that the standard structure is don't have and you're a noun, but we can use have, no, and a noun. We use it in two specific situations. We commonly use it with concepts, feelings, emotions, desires, or attitudes, and then we can use it with physical nouns when we want to emphasize that physical noun. So now it's your turn to practice. I want you to leave 3 sentences. 1 using have, no, and a desire, an attitude, or a concept. Another one, just using your simple don't have and a physical noun. And your third one, I want you to use have no and a physical noun, but a physical noun that you want to emphasize. So choose that noun carefully, because remember, would I really emphasize that I have no chapstick, for example? So think carefully about which physical noun you want to use and make sure it makes sense to emphasize that you don't have it. So leave those in the comments below. Are you ready for your quiz? Hit pause, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. Amazing job with this lesson. You did it. So how did you do with all those quizzes? Share your score in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe. And before you go, make sure you head on over to my website, jforrestenglish.com, and download your free speaking guide. In this guide, I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. And until next time, happy studying.